Perfectionism is in the eye of the beholder, and how can you ever really have control of whether other people think of something you did or achieved as perfect? You really can't control that. But I promise you, the people who identify with perfectly hidden depression say, no, I try to control everything. I am the leader, I'm not the follower.
Hey, it's Julie. Welcome to Uncomfy. A lot of us are struggling right now with how to stay open to other people when we seem to be living in different realities. I feel like I'm always walking on eggshells, never quite sure what to say or how to say it, but I also don't want to give up on connection. This is a podcast about staying with the moments we usually want to escape, the awkward ones, the tense ones, the ones that can actually teach us something. So let's get uncomfy.
I was sitting there looking at this young woman who was so aghast at her own mistakes. And I had this feeling in my gut, now is the time. Now is the time. And although I was scared, the words came out of my mouth. You're about to join a club that I've been a member of for a long time.
Friends, this is Margaret Rutherford. She's a clinical psychologist. She's author of a couple of books about perfectly hidden depression, and the newest one is called The Perfectly Hidden Depression Workbook. Margaret, welcome. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you, Julie, so much. I'm delighted to be here.
All right, so tell us a little more about that moment then. It sounds like you were working with a client. This was a therapy session.
Yes. I actually, when I moved here, we moved to a small town in Arkansas from Dallas. And I remember telling my therapist in Dallas, I'm not going to tell anyone I've been married before. In fact, 2 times before to move to this small town. I'd grown up in a small town in Arkansas. So I was like, oh gosh, no, I'm not going to do that. And he just smiled sort of wisely at me and said, well, that's an option. But I also read the book by Maya Angelou, Wouldn't Take Nothing for My Journey Now. It's a group of essays where in that book, she describes this time when in New York, she'd been voted person of the week or person of the month or something. And she and friends were out celebrating, right? And she got absolutely plastered and sat down and talked to this table of men complaining about why men didn't find her attractive and what was wrong with her, totally embarrassed herself. And I thought, that's the way I want to be. Here is this woman who's a poet laureate, who's a beautiful author, and I want to be honest. But then I had this contradiction in my own behavior, right? And I'm a psychologist urging people to be more transparent and to make sure they have a lot of self-acceptance. And then the powers that be sent me this young woman. And she came in and she just was distraught and she was shaking her head and grabbed a Kleenex immediately and said, I'm just going through this very hard time. I never dreamed I would get not 1 divorce, but now 2. And then she said to me, but you wouldn't understand. And I felt like, okay, I get it. This is my moment. But my gut was tight. I was both yearning to say those words and to admit my truth, but also I just was afraid. I was afraid, plain old fear. But I looked at her and I said, well, actually, you're about to join a club I've been a member of for quite a long time.
What were you afraid of, Margaret?
Oh, professionally, that, there would be people who would judge that. And there are probably people who are. There are people who would say, well, she's been married 3 times now. The last time for 35 years, mind you. And there would be people who would judge that and say, well, I don't want to go to, but there are plenty of facts about my life that maybe somebody would hear or know and decide, no, she's not my cup of tea. But I was afraid of the judgment. And I also, I think, was afraid of my own truth, afraid of letting it be, letting it live in me, letting it out, letting it exist. Rather than this more performance oriented, now I've got the degree, now I've got the practice, now I've got the husband, now I've got the child, and everything is going great. So we certainly don't want to look back over our shoulder and reveal that I struggled, quite a bit. But actually, Julie, when I started writing in 2012 and then have written now 2 books, well, actually 3 books, I'm quite honest and about everything. And so what I have found, instead of judgment that I've had many people say to me, I just am so appreciative of the fact that you are a treating psychologist, you do therapy, you write books and all that, but you also say, I've got some problems, or it did, so I just think that that kind of honesty and revelation has been very good, even though sometimes a little uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable and even, dare we say, therapeutic on some level. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
lot of what you write about is this balance between the sort of performance, the word you used, of,
right.
success and
Mhm,
having it all
mhm.
together, and also owning in an I guess like a non-shameful way,
Yes,
the
exactly,
way that you
exactly.
feel that may not also be perfect, the mistakes you've made, but also just what you might be feeling under the surface. So explain that a little bit further. This is what you call perfectly
Perfectly hidden
hidden
depression, which I've
depression.
never really considered that I have. Yeah, I'm more in the anxiety category. I have panic attacks and that kind of thing, but depression has never been something that I particularly had to deal with, except through menopause. But what I have struggled with is perfectionism in itself and needing to look a certain way, be a certain way. And so what led me to this book, I never wanted to write a book. I was a therapist. I was a mother. I was a friend. I was a wife. I was quite happy with my life. But I wrote a piece thinking about these people, Julie, who had come into my office. And if I had asked them if they were depressed, they would vehemently deny that they had even any reason to be depressed. And so, of course, they weren't depressed. But what I actually found out was that they could not express emotional pain. They didn't know how. It was so far back in their awareness or their conscious being, or it had become so automatic to push away any kind of emotional pain from the past and the current time that they just didn't have access to it. And they would kind of look at me like, what do you mean feel? I think more than I feel. So it's staying in this, it what starts out probably as a survival strategy as a child to handle whatever caused that feeling that it's not safe for me to express pain becomes its own prison in adulthood.
So how does perfectionism fit into this picture then?
Basically, as we say in Arkansas, there are many ways around the barn. And what happens with perfectionism with children who, or teenagers or something, or just someone who's facing some sort of trauma or hurt or hardship as a child, a lack of safety, maybe it's abuse, maybe their parents are alcoholic and leave them to take care of the other kids. So they're sort of a pseudo adult. Maybe they grew up in a home where you just wasn't allowed to have bad feelings, to be angry or to be sad. What happens is that perfectionism can become the go-to response for that kind of thing. If I'm keeping these secrets, then I'll go find my safety in perfectionism. I'll find a way to feel okay and safe through making great grades, being the star athlete. I'm going to seem perfect to other people. I'm going to seem like I have a perfect life. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but we really love perfectionism. We love the athletes that are spending hours on the field practicing. We love the intellectuals who, make good grades. And so the more you do it, the more you find success through it and achievement through it, it becomes a thicker and thicker armor that you have to wear. And you're very scared of taking it off. In fact, it almost feels impossible to take it off. What can happen, though, is that eventually all those feelings that are shoved away, the anger, the terror, whatever it happened to be, start seeping out from that closet, and it gets harder to control. And if there is a mistake, it's immediately covered up. It's immediately taken care of. It's immediately hidden. And so there's just no emotional transparency. In fact, a lot of these people just don't have much of an emotional life.
So can you contrast what the alternative, I guess maybe healthier response would be when something doesn't live up, or when rather than kind of mask it and not have the emotional life, the alternative is what exactly?
Well, the alternative is one, not expecting perfection out of yourself. I mean, to just to realize that, as Brene Brown said, really, perfectionism is in the eye of the beholder. And how can you ever really have control of whether other people think of something you did or achieved as perfect? You really can't control that. But I promise you, the people who identify with perfectly hidden depression say, no, 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 I try to control everything. I'm in tight emotional control. I take control. If I'm going to be involved in something, then I am the leader. I'm not the follower. And so it's, you're smiling.
Yeah,
um,
having yourself reflected back to you is always humbling, so
believe me, I know. Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
So it is this determination to not, well, what's the old phrase? Not, don't let anyone see you sweat. That's really, this is easy for me. And although they know how hard they work at something, they
Yeah.
know I have put so much effort into this, but it looks effortless.
Yeah. So
And
what's the
that's,
emotional life piece? You've said on a couple of occasions
Mhm.
that people with perfectly hidden depression don't have much emotional life, meaning what exactly? And what would it look like if they did have an emotional life?
When I mean that, I don't mean I mean there's not a lot of range of emotion. Sadly,
Oh,
when you, there have been all kinds of studies about this isn't mine, but when you tamp down or you don't reveal sadness or some of the more difficult emotions to feel, you also narrow the entire range of emotions that's available to you because you just stay away from anything that's too intense and it can become narrower and narrower. So you can have happiness, but not joy, not just, it's like, I got to stay in control. And so that becomes more important and more of a habit than anything that may look out of control. No one's going to come up to these people and say, "Are you okay?" Because they look like they're, I mean, people actually will come up to them and say, "I wish I had your life. I have no idea how you do all that you do." There's a lot of admiration that comes their way for being achievers, for being successful, for being hard workers, for being known for their generosity and how much time they take with everything. But it's just simply they're going for a goal. And if they don't reach the goal, then they're failing and they can't fail. And the fact is that as perfectionism rates have gone up, and they are going up substantially in all age groups, that suicide rates are also going up. So it is, and they are correlated.
what is the first step, I guess, in a way forward for, I suppose, if folks are listening and thinking, gosh, this could be me, it could be my partner, maybe it's my friend, maybe it's my kid. What's the first step to sort of peeling back a little bit of that armor, I guess, in a way that can lead to healing?
You know, when I first started writing about this, I got pummeled a bit on Facebook as I tried to write about this and say what I thought it was or learn what I thought it was. Because people said, you are pathologizing resilience. You're pathologizing courage. You're seeing that as some kind of sickness, and that's wrong. There's nothing wrong with being stoic. There's nothing wrong with keeping on, keeping on. And I don't disagree with any of that. What the problem is it's the only option. You can't even take a minute to let the intensity of how you feel rise into your awareness and maybe feel that feeling. The first step is awareness that your brand of perfectionism is a problem. Because I promise you, no perfectionist walks in a therapist's office and says, you know, I'm just too perfectionistic is a real problem. I've never heard that, nor probably will I at first. So and then you know you become aware that it's a problem and that it has led you to probably lead a very lonely life because no one knows the real you. Maybe you don't even know the real you. And then comes commitment because it is hard work. I have someone who was doing great work and she had come in because of this and because of reading about it and she was recognizing she was doing great work, but then something has happened in her life and she's left therapy and I not that that's not her right and she you know certainly that's fine, but at the same time I doubt if she'll be back because she hit a roadblock that okay, I've done this amount of the work, I'm aware, but I don't know if I can change. I don't know if I can risk changing, and certainly not because of this one thing happening. So Um,
Because it is risky. It feels really
it's
risky to
risky.
change. And
It is
also
risky.
to potentially, just like you at the very beginning, I mean, on a maybe a smaller scale, like divulging the the less
Yes.
perfect moments or, aspects of your background could
Yeah. I
expose
mean,
you
it
to all
is
kinds of things.
exactly. And I have switched. In the first book, I used the word vulnerability a lot. I have switched from using that word because there's a lot of negative connotations of the word vulnerable. It's like I am defenseless. I am at risk. I am unprotected. So I have switched to using the word transparent because that's what I really mean when I say vulnerability is what I mean is it's not like you just, to anybody who'll listen, you bare your soul about the rocks your parent threw at you or there was no food in the fridge, there was only beer. You don't necessarily have to start there. In fact, you don't. The first step is more to find someone you trust and to look at them and say, I'm not very good about talking about myself, but I've been your friend for a long time and I'd like to try with you. And they probably would say, well, of course. And that may be all you say. You just start where you are and you say, just like I said to that young woman, you reveal what you're ready to reveal. And that may be, God, this is really hard for me and this is really uncomfortable. And that's okay. Just start there. And gradually you could become more open and a little more transparent. It's certainly always your choice what you choose to talk about and what you don't.
Margaret Rutherford is a clinical psychologist. Her new book is The Perfectly Hidden Depression Workbook. Thank you for your time today, Dr. Rutherford. I appreciate it.
Julie, thank you very much.
And thank you for getting uncomfy with us today. I really liked how she was differentiating between transparency and vulnerability. And it made me think about how many times in these uncomfy episodes we talk about transparency, like sort of being willing to divulge how we're feeling, how we're uncomfortable, or what's hard for us in the moment, is actually a really useful tool for staying in that moment a little bit, to be like, I think, I disagree, or this is a little hard for me, or I'm not really comfortable in this moment, but also I want to see what else I can learn. So that was an interesting light bulb moment for me. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you think. The email is uncomfy@byu.edu. Uncomfy is a BYU radio podcast. Samuel Benson produces it, and the team includes Hyobin Kim and Sam Payne. Our theme music was composed by Kelsey Ney. I'm Julie Rose. Can't wait to get uncomfy with you again next week. Hey friends, it's Julie. I want to recommend a show your whole family can enjoy together. It's called The Appleseed from BYU Radio. It's a storytelling podcast where you'll find everything from tales about talking critters to heartwarming real life moments. These are award-winning storytellers from all over the world who come to the Appleseed stage, and they share experiences about gut feelings that paid off, small acts of kindness, even the occasional mishap like dyeing your eyebrows the wrong color. So gather your family for great adventures that might just spark stories of your own that you can share with the people you love to create connection. Tune into the Appleseed on BYU Radio or listen on your favorite podcast app.